Am I audible? Okay. Good evening, everyone. First of all, sorry for the delay. Actually, there was some an incident on the road. So luckily, I think I'm totally fine. Nothing happened. So there was some bike guy who just थोड़ा सा ही गिर गया था साइड से आके. He was driving very rashly. So even though it was not my fault, so but still, as per the road rules, you have to stop and see, ensure that there is no issue. So उसके चक्कर में लेट हो गया था. Chalo, let's start. In the last class, we covered about the reforms required in civil services. We are talking about reforms required in civil services in terms of various different headings, in terms of specialized knowledge, disciplinary regime, depoliticization, and Supreme Court recommendations in T.R. Subramaniam case, and then the overall idea about lateral entry, the arguments against, for. So finally, the conclusion, way forward. Then we also discussed the mission Karma Yogi, and we started with the last unit of governance, that is development and government policies for development. Okay, we discussed what is development, different aspects of development, including economical, social, political, etc. Then the government policy regarding the development, different models of development, including the state-led development, neoliberal paradigm, and then sustainable development model, participatory development, and the right-based approach. So these are the different development models. So in today's class, we'll talk about development industry, the different stakeholders in development industry. Before that, let's briefly see what is the government policy. Government policy का मतलब क्या है? What is the meaning of government policy, and what are the various aspects involved in policy making, and the different stages, ये सारी चीजें regarding the government policy making, we'll try to see that. Policy formulation. First, let's talk about policy. What do you mean by policy? Can somebody tell me what is the meaning of policy? You might have heard about public policy, government policy, national policy, state policy. So first tell me what is policy. What do you mean by policy? Government decisions to fulfill their objective. Decision is not policy, it's different. Way to approach any problem, good, we can say so. A set of certain commitments, okay. Policy is a framework which an organization intends to follow, okay, framework. So we can say policy is course of action. Okay, it is course of action or a framework of action. Course of action or framework of action, any course of action which we can say either in the public sector or private sector or in an individual sphere we can say. Okay, so all of it we call it as policy. So policy can be anything, like we have a saying, honesty is the best policy, right? So it's basically the principle behind the action. It is not necessarily the action, okay, it is not a decision. So what exactly we are trying to achieve? What are the overall principle behind that, the framework which we want to achieve? So that is what we call it as policy. Public policy, what do you mean by public policy? Public policy is the policy of government. Okay, it is not the policy of public, not the policy of people. Okay, it is a policy of government in any specific area, specific sector. The government, if it is declaring a specific policy, okay, that is what we call it as the public policy. So why do we need a public policy? Okay, what is the necessity of having a public policy? Because any area, any sector requires some targeted set of actions in order to bring some result. In order to bring some result, we need some targeted set of actions. Because ऐसे भी नहीं है कि हमारे पास अनलिमिटेड रिसोर्सेस है, अनलिमिटेड मैन पावर है, वी विल डू एवरीथिंग एवरी एरिया, ओके, सो वो तो नहीं होगा. वी नीड टू सेट द priorities. Those areas, those problems which require urgent attention should be given urgent attention, है ना. तो वो कैटेगराइज करना है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल लेट्स टेक हेल्थ सेक्टर. ओके, इन हेल्थ सेक्टर if the government is bringing a national policy, it clearly makes the statements, the objectives, okay, what are we trying to achieve through this national policy, what are the priorities which we are going to set, किस direction में हम लेके जा रहे हैं the entire health sector. So that is what is national policy on health, fine. So and it of course varies from one period to another. It cannot remain the same. As per the present priorities, present requirement, the government needs to set up the targets. The government needs to set up the targets. So that is what is policy. Fine. It is very important that I'll give you the definition. Okay, pehle suno. It is very important that the government sets up these the objectives so that it can overcome certain challenges and make use of certain opportunities to bring the best of the result. To bring the best of the result. That is what is policy. So we need policy in every area. We need policy in every area, either in environment or either in case of health or either in case of education or transportation or infrastructure. So हर area में we need policy. The government should clearly set out the overall idea, overall targets. For example, the national forest policy. Okay, 1998 में आया था, उसके बाद में आया नहीं अभी तक. The national forest policy sets overall target of achieving 33% of green coverage, okay, the forest coverage. So whatever the actions the government is going to take in this department, forest department or afforestation or reforestation, it should be directed towards that, right? So like that. You can write the definition. Public policy क्या होता है? What is public policy? Proposed course of action of a government within a given environment. Proposed course of action of a government within a given environment, providing opportunities and obstacles. Environment providing opportunities and obstacles which the policy aims to utilize and overcome. Proposed course of action of a government within a given environment, providing opportunities and obstacles which the policy aims to utilize and overcome. The policy aims to utilize and overcome to realize a given role. To realize a given role. So that is what we call it as public policy. A public policy involves different stages of policy making, implementation, everything. So stages of public policy. Stages of public policy. Before you make any public policy, the first stage is agenda setting. Agenda setting. So what is agenda setting? Agenda setting is basically to identify the problematic area. To identify the specific problematic area where you want to make a policy. You need to set the agenda first. Fine. Second, policy formulation. Policy formulation. So here there is no dictation, keep writing. So what do you mean by policy formulation? Policy formulation is framing of policy. Okay, it is not accepted by the government yet. It is not implemented yet. It is just in the framing stage. Who is going to frame the policies? Our government. Okay, government means ministers. Minister means bureaucrats. Okay? So usually it's not the ministers who themselves will frame these policies. जो भी ministry का particular ministry का जो भी policy रहता है, it is not framed by that particular ministers only. So it is that entire set of bureaucrats who are assisting that minister. So they are the one who actually makes the policy. They identify the problematic area. Okay, जो भी problematic area identify हुआ है. So then they will sit and discuss what are the things, what are the course of action should be taken, what are the objectives should be set, overall target area कौन सा है, resources कैसे utilize करनी, ये पूरा framework बनाएंगे. जैसे कि हमारा national policy on health और national policy on education जो latest है. They will set the objectives. They will create a legislative and regulatory framework to implement that. That is what is policy formulation. So once the policy is formulated, next comes policy adoption. Policy adoption is by the government. Okay. So if it is a simple national policy on a particular sector, so that will be accepted by the government, cabinet notifies, okay, government has accepted, that means the policy is adopted. So some of the things in the policy requires the legislative backup. In that case, it has to be adopted in the parliament, in legislature. Okay. So that is what is policy adoption. Adoption by the government or legislature that brings the policy as the official policy of the government. Abhi tak it was not an official policy of the government. Once it is adopted, that means that the government has accepted, okay, this is what the government is planning to do. This is what the government is planning to implement. So then comes policy implementation. Policy implementation. So once the government accepts that, okay, this is our government policy in this particular sector, जो भी executives है, जो भी civil servants है, bureaucrats है, it is their responsibility that they implement this. That is what is policy implementation. That is bring it on the ground. Whatever the objective set by the government, so they are going to bring. For example, if it is a national forest policy, so they are setting the target, okay, let's try to achieve 33% of forest cover. So जो भी forest department का official होता है, तो उनको responsibility हो जाते at their level to implement this. Okay, the policy would have set clear cut guidelines and regulations, पूरा framework बना दिया होगा, उसको implement करना इनका काम होता है. So once the policy is under implementation, it is very much required that we evaluate the policy. Okay, policy evaluation is a continuous process. It is not necessary that we need to wait till the policy implementation is over. Okay, जो भी उनका prescribed timing दिया होगा, so we don't have to wait till then. It is a continuous process once the implementation starts. Okay, and this policy evaluation involves the feedback from all the different stages. Okay, once the policy is under implementation, let's say national forest policy is under implementation, तब 1988 में हमने set कर दिया था 33%. We are yet to achieve that. Right? So अभी तो 2022 है. So पता नहीं कब achieve करेंगे. So are there any issue in the setting agenda itself? Check करना है. Are there any issue in the policy formulation, the way it has been formulated, the way it has been drafted, the way it has been adapted, or the way it has been implemented? It is a continuous process which should be checked during the entire period of policy implementation. That is what is policy evaluation. To check whether the policy which is under implementation is addressing the prevalent problem or not. So that is what is policy evaluation. Is that clear? So those are the different stages involved in policy. Stages in public policy. Let's see what are the important characteristics of a public policy. An efficient, a good public policy कैसे होना चाहिए? Anju is asking who decides procedures for implementing, is that depend on the respective authority? Yes. See, overall broader idea of implementation is set in the policy itself. Overall broader idea, okay, कैसे करना है, क्या करना है. For example, we are setting a target of 33% of forest cover. Okay, बोलते हैं कि उसके अंदर दिया होगा we need to achieve through reforestation, afforestation, community forest management. We will try to do this. वो broader agenda ही रहता है. But on the ground, it is up to the authorities who is implementing at the district level. उनका discretion रहता है उसको कैसे implement करना है. Okay, so it is the mix of both. At the broader level, it is set by the policy itself, within the policy itself, and at the local level, at the implementation level, it is the discretion कैसे उसको implement करना है. So what are the various characteristics? We can say a good public policy है तो कैसे होना चाहिए? How exactly? A good public policy should be made after a wide consultation. It should involve a wide consultation, a consultation of all the different stakeholders, the people, citizens, civil society, the private sector. Okay, please keep writing. यहाँ पर this entire class it goes in a very practical discussion कैसे on the ground रहेगा. I'll try to bring out the important points. Points लिखते जाओ. So उसका elaboration wherever it is required, you have to write it by yourself. Okay, it is about wider consultation. Whoever is there, whoever is involved, whoever is going to be the stakeholders of that particular sector. So everyone should be consulted, taken their input. Then only we need to set the targets, priorities, everything. So that is what is wide consultation. Fine. Then it should set a specific goals to be achieved, or specific targets to be achieved. Okay, specific goals or specific targets to be achieved, without which the policy becomes ineffective. Right? Without which the policy becomes ineffective. Specifically होना चाहिए. ऐसा ही नहीं होना चाहिए कि ठीक है हम एफोरेस्टेशन कर देंगे, रिफोरेस्टेशन कर देंगे, सो विल ट्राई टू डेवलप द एनवायरनमेंट, कंजर्व द एनवायरनमेंट. ऐसे ब्रॉडर आइडिया नहीं देना चाहिए. इट शुड बी स्पेसिफिक टारगेट टू बी अचीव्ड. राइट? एंड टू इंप्लीमेंट दोज टारगेट्स इट शुड ले डाउन द स्पेसिफिक गाइडलाइंस. Of course, the broader guidelines. It should lay down the broader guidelines. Broader guidelines क्योंकि on the ground implementation तो it depends upon the local condition. It varies from one region to another, right? So it should be the discretion should be given to those officers on the ground to implement this. So, but broader guidelines though it should be set within the policy itself. Then wide consultation में तो ज्यादा कुछ नहीं है. You need to consult all the different stakeholders, take their opinion regarding what are the targets to be set, कैसे उसको अचीव करे, कैसे implement करे, what are the problem area. ये सारा decide करने के पहले before you actually formulate the policy, you need to consult the public before you formulate the policy. That is what is wider consultation. Then a policy should be comprehensive. It should not be too narrow. A policy should be comprehensive. Okay, try to cover the broader area of this entire sector. जो भी major issues है. Suppose we are making a policy in transportation. Okay, road transportation का कुछ policy बना रहे हैं. क्या क्या अचीव करना है नेक्स्ट 5 years में ऐसे बोल के. सो इट नीड्स टू हाईलाइट व्हाट आर द इंपॉर्टेंट एरियाज रिक्वायर्ड, है ना, डेवलपमेंट जहां पर रिक्वायर है. आइदर इन कंस्ट्रक्शन हो गया, मेंटेनेंस हो गया, नेशनल हाईवे हो गया, लोकल रूरल रोड्स हो गया. सो कौन कौन सा एरियाज जो मेजर एरियाज है वो पूरा कॉम्प्रहेंसिव तरीके से कवर करना है. दैट इज व्हाट इज इट शुड बी कॉम्प्रहेंसिव. एट द सेम टाइम इट शुड बी डायनामिक एज वेल एज फ्यूचरिस्टिक. Dynamic and futuristic. मतलब a policy should not be very static. इट शुड नॉट बी समथिंग लाइक हाँ हमने कुछ टारगेट सेट किया था 10 साल पहले एंड अभी भी उसको अचीव करने के लिए कोशिश कर रहे हैं, बट वो पूरा सिनेरियो ही चेंज हो गया है. द ओवरऑल इश्यू इटसेल्फ इज इररिलेवेंट, बट स्टिल वी आर फॉलोइंग दैट पॉलिसी. ऐसे नहीं होना चाहिए. ए पॉलिसी शुड बी डायनामिक. उसका मतलब है इट शुड अचीव द चेंजिंग नीड्स, द चेंजिंग नेसेसिटीज, the changing demands of the people. As per the time, the demands of the people would change, and the policy should accommodate all of this. That is what is dynamic or futuristic. So these are some of the characteristics. Yes, it should be realistic. भी होना चाहिए, realistic होना चाहिए, सस्टेनेबल होना चाहिए, पब्लिक पॉलिसी इन इंडिया. Historically, how it has been. Historically, the government in India followed the state-led development approach. लास्ट क्लास में हमने डिस्कस किया था स्टेट लेड डेवलपमेंट अप्रोच. व्हाट इज स्टेट लेड डेवलपमेंट अप्रोच? सो इट्स बेसिकली वेयर द स्टेट इज टेकिंग ए प्रोएक्टिव रोल इन डेवलपमेंट, है ना. इट इज टेकिंग ए प्रोएक्टिव रोल इन डेवलपमेंट, एंड दिस वाज हिस्टोरिकली फॉलोड फ्रॉम 1950 टू 1990. व्हाट वाज द नेचर ऑफ पॉलिसी इन दिस टाइम? Overall, the entire policy was set by our planning commission. Okay, planning commission was the nodal agency of policy making in India for this entire period of state-led development. Okay, planning commission played a very central role in deciding the objectives, setting the targets, and even the financial distribution also, financial allocation. That is where the problem came. Planning Commission is a body which is non-statutory, non-constitutional. Okay, it is non-statutory and non-constitutional body. It should not have been given the financial distribution power. It became too powerful. A body which is not given any constitutional status, not given any statutory backup, was too powerful to decide about the financial distribution. That had reduced the independence of states. They were too dependent upon the center. There was less of federal mechanism over there. So that is why it was more about the centralization. एक जगह में सेंट्रल में पॉलिसी डिसाइड हो रहा था, उसको they were trying to implement it. That was one of the negative also. Major issue with that was the overall central method of planning, the centralization of power. So what are the other characteristics of that particular era? When the planning commission was leading the overall policy making and policy implementation. एक तो मैंने बता दिया, it was totally centralized. Were there any issues? Too much of centralization? Then और क्या इश्यू था? What are the problems of policy making during the time period of planning commission? Strict regulatory framework. ठीक है, then less incentive to private. Less incentive to private. There was too much of control over the different sectors of economy. The government control was too high. Centralization is same as top-down approach. Very good, Shivam. Absence of feedback mechanism. Absence of feedback mechanism. It is very important that a government agency which is implementing the policy, which is formulating the policy, should get the feedback at regular intervals from the public as well as the implementing agency, district level, state level. Okay, there was not much of feedback mechanism at that point of time. Then corruption, red tape, ये तो थोड़ा बहुत जनरल हो जाएगा, और स्पेसिफिकली बताओ. Politically motivated policy. Good. Politically motivated policy. ये तो अभी भी चल रहा है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं था कि तब था अभी खत्म हो गया, अभी भी चल रहा है. So even the issue of farm loan waiver, the subsidy, okay, these are all the, we can give an example of politically motivated policy. See, such things like the farm loan waiver or subsidy, we can state them as good politics, bad economics. Okay, good politics, bad economics. Of course, we need to cater to the needs of the farmers. We need to see the problems and try to find a solution. But a blanket farm loan waiver is not a solution in that context. है ना? So that too, if you see the election time, the political parties, they declare, okay, if they come into power, they will completely waive the entire farm loans. Right? Many of the states we have seen. And even the idea of subsidy. Subsidy it should be targeted. It should be targeted. If you are giving overall in a large area without any specific targeted approach, if you are giving subsidy, so that will lead to inefficient use of resources, right? जैसे fertilizer subsidy हो गया, electricity का subsidy हो गया, you know, so that is what is. So these are all the policies which are politically motivated because they have a political gains through this. This has been the situation even before the 1990 liberalization era, even after that also. ये भी अभी भी continue हो ही रहा है. Then lack of commitment for welfare, okay, widely participation, not comprehensive, not goal oriented. Fragmentation of policy is also another one. You can say fragmentation of policy. Fragmentation of policy का मतलब है like you are not following a comprehensive approach. Okay, you are not trying to bring a comprehensive approach in the policy making. See, I am not talking about centralization here. Centralization is different. Centralization is actually an issue. There should not be too much of centralization of power. There should be decentralization of power. Okay, it should be implemented at the on the ground level. Top down approach नहीं होना चाहिए, bottom up approach होना चाहिए. ये सब चीजें मैं भी मानता हूँ. But there should be overall comprehensiveness in the policy making. Okay, an integrated approach in policy making I am talking about here. You try to have a fragmented approach in policy making. For example, transport sector ले लो. Okay, transport sector is not under any particular one ministry. We have railways के लिए अलग है, highways के लिए अलग है, civil aviation अलग है, okay, shipping अलग है. Fine. Of course, these are very big sectors that should be dealt separately, but there should be some common approach among all of these, an integrated approach trying to develop the entire transport sector of India. Okay, whatever the policies are coming out from these individual ministries, there should be some kind of coherence and integration of objectives. Right? If suppose let's take in the current context of climate change, global warming context, if they are trying to move towards the greener fuel, so there should be coherence. Every different sectors of transportation should try to achieve that. तभी वो achieve होगा. Right? So you try to make the transportation greener on railways, so that might not be followed in the roadways. Roadways cheap हो जाएगा. So everything will shift from railways to roadways. Right? So that is what the major issue is the fragmentation in policy making. You should not see a particular sector separately from the overall entire जो particular segment होता है. जैसे कि civil aviation, you are talking about civil aviation, you need to see from the overall idea of transportation sector, infrastructure sector, right? So there should not be much of fragmentation. Same goes with the drinking water. Okay, India में drinking water का context ले लो. So drinking water comes under rural and development ministry. Drinking water के लिए अलग सा ministry है and rivers के लिए अलग सा ministry है. There is no comprehensive management of this issue of drinking water, right? So it is dealt in all the different areas. So that is what is fragmentation. वो issue नहीं होना चाहिए. So it has been there and it has been continuing also. Fine. Absence of feedback mechanism में आप वो भी include करो. The role of private sector, the role of NGOs, civil society in taking the feedback from them, how exactly the policy has been implemented on the ground or not, how exactly the objectives should have been, all that areas. Is that clear? So when this new government came into power in 2014, the NDA government, they abolished, the first thing they did was, one of the first thing was to abolish this policy, the planning commission, and to establish Niti Aayog in the place of planning commission. Now, has there been any change in the role of this planning commission and Niti Aayog? Definitely there is a change. Okay, the change is in terms of financial distribution. Niti Aayog has no role. Okay, it is not playing, at this point of time, it is not playing any role in the dispersal of the financial resources to the states, which was earlier being done by the planning commission. But otherwise most of the other areas, other functionings remain the same, only that वहाँ पर था 5-year plan, यहाँ पर कुछ और बना दिया, 3 years targets, 5-year targets, 7 years targets, ऐसे कुछ बना दिया. So which is not overall in a like a 5-year plan जैसे targeted manner में implement नहीं कर रहा है. They are targeting the specific areas. Okay, specific areas को target करके, and Niti Aayog has been made as a more of a research body giving policy advice to the government. Okay, पहले भी planning commission का almost same ही role था, but overall it had the power in giving out the money to the states, financial distribution. So which was removed at this point of time. So that is the major difference. So otherwise many of the issues in policy making still remain the same. Okay, so centralization थोड़ा बहुत कम हो गया है with the coming of the cooperative federalism, comparative federalism. You can give various examples like the with the 14th Finance Commission increasing the devolution to the states 42%, अभी 42 से 41% आ गया. So वो बहुत minor change है. So 42% you can see, though it's a a very good move towards decentralization, and private sector has also been given incentivization after the LPG era. जो लिबरलाइजेशन, ग्लोबलाइजेशन, प्राइवेटाइजेशन स्टार्ट होने के बाद में थोड़ा बहुत private sectors have picked up and their involvement has increased, but at the same time there are few other issues, okay, in terms of the ease of doing business and the various issues over there. Uska abhi bhi chal raha hai, it is not completely done. So absence of feedback mechanism, many of the things are still the same, and politically motivated policies are still the same, fragmentation is still the same. So few of the issues are continuing even now, and few of the issues have come to an end, luckily. Is that clear? So that is majorly about a brief discussion of policy, public policy in India. So let's discuss few terms in the context of policy making. Few terms which are important from the exam point of view. Okay, उसका meaning क्या है, मतलब क्या है, ये सारा चीजें हम discuss करेंगे. First one is multi-level planning. Multi-level planning. What do you mean by multi-level planning? Single level planning क्या होता है? What do you mean by single level planning? To understand multi-level planning, you should understand what is single level planning first. What do you mean by single level planning? Which is almost opposite of multi-level planning. Yes, इस मेजरली नेशनल लेवल पे जो प्लानिंग होता है, that is what is single level planning. Single level planning is formulation of plans and policies at the national level. Formulation of plans and policies at national level is called as single level planning. Single level planning will be useful in a crisis situation, emergency situation. Okay, there is some kind of war. Okay, one single decision is taken at the national level and everyone will follow that. In a crisis situation, emergency situation, that would work. Or if it is a totally unitary government, a small country, a small country unitary government hai, totally unitary hai. So there are no federalism, there are no federal units at all. In that case, the single level planning is required. But in a country like in India, a single level planning should not be there. We should have a multi-level planning. So what is multi-level planning then? Multi-level planning is different from grassroots level planning. there is a very minute difference between decentralized planning and multi-level planning. So that's why I'm trying to bring this discussion. Yes, Samim, totally right. So basically, multi-level planning involves planning at all the different levels of administration. We have national level, state level, district level, village level. Different levels of administration. Multi-level planning involves planning at all the different levels. At the national level, we should have a broader planning. Overall कैसे होना चाहिए? Okay, if you are talking about education, overall India का education किस direction में होना चाहिए? Should we give importance to the primary sector, primary education, secondary education, tertiary education, higher education में देना है? So what are the overall objective? ये सारा overall objective national level पे set होना चाहिए. And from the overall broader perspective, each of these states should have its own plan, because in some of the states they would have achieved primary education का पूरा level खत्म हो गया, so they want to target on tertiary level. Okay, tertiary education में target करना है, higher education में target करना है. Some of the states are backward, they still want to give more focus on the primary education, so that liberty should be there, but overall it should be in accordance with the national plan. Each of the states should have its own plan also, but that should be according to the national objective. Under the overall umbrella of national objective, the state should have its own planning, and under the state's overall umbrella, district should have its own planning as per the local resource availability, local requirement के लिए, and that should be delegated finally to the village level. So identifying the different levels and planning accordingly is multi-level planning. Okay, you can write the definition. Multi-level planning is the utilization of a number of well-defined area levels and agency levels performing well understood functions. Not only at the implementation, but also during planning. The important thing about multi-level planning is identification of different levels. किस level पे planning होना चाहिए, and what is the extent of plan at each of these level, that should be clearly identified. Okay, the important thing about multi-level planning is identification of different levels and the extent of planning at each of these levels. That is first thing. Second, all the different plannings at different levels should be in an integrated manner. Okay, it should not diverge from the overall national state level targets, state level objective. Okay, overall जो objective रहता है उससे diverge नहीं होना चाहिए. It should be in an integrated manner. So these are the two things which we have to keep in mind. The first one, you can write identification of levels at which the planning, identification of levels at which the planning functions. are assigned and the respective areas of responsibilities. So stop. Planning at multi-level has to be integrated. That is the objective as well as challenge of multi-level planning. ये objective भी है, challenge भी है. Because if you are planning at all the different levels, naturally ये हो जाता है कि like there would be some divergence, some deviation from the overall target. वो नहीं होना चाहिए. Okay, there should be integration. A multi-level planning will gradually lead to decentralized planning. Multi-level planning will gradually lead to decentralized planning. So how both are different? So what do you mean by decentralization? Decentralization basically means dispersal of power. The power is not at the center. All the grassroots level, okay, this is the central area and these are the grassroots levels. It is the grassroots levels which are holding the power. There is no centralization of power. Okay, there is no control of everything from the center. Okay, the units at the grassroots level, they are having the power to run themselves. They are not taking a direct order from the central government, but still they are under one particular unit. Decentralization का मतलब ये नहीं कि पूरा independent हो गया, पूरा separate हो गया. They are under one particular unit, but they are running themselves. They are not being controlled from the center. That is what is decentralization. So if at all I am talking about decentralized planning, इसका मतलब है the local levels are given more importance in the overall planning process. If at all I am saying there is a single level planning, I am talking only about the national level. Multi-level planning gives equal importance to all the different levels, but decentralized planning gives more importance to the village level planning. है ना? There is more emphasis, more importance given to the village level, the local bodies. In case of urban regions, it is the local bodies, urban local bodies. In case of villages, it is the rural local bodies which are given greater freedom in planning. And as per the needs of these local levels, rest other levels will adjust accordingly. ये दोनों कंपल्सरी नहीं है in case of multi-level planning. In case of multi-level planning, we are just planning at different levels. But in decentralized planning, we are giving more emphasis, more importance to the village level planning. Among all the different levels, more power is given to the village level, first thing. Second thing is, as per the local requirements, the other levels will adjust itself. ऐसा नहीं होगा नेशनल लेवल पे टारगेट फिक्स होगा उसको इंप्लीमेंट कर रहे है ना. More importance is given to the village level, more importance is given to the decentralized units at the village level as well as at the city level. City levels में urban local bodies है, wards है. So जो on the ground reality based होगा planning. That is what is decentralized planning. ठीक है? So here you can write the definition of decentralized planning. A planning where the task of formulating, adapting and executing, task of formulating, adapting, executing and supervising, task of formulating, adapting, executing and supervising the plan is dispersed rather than entrusted to central authority. So stop. The local bodies are given greater freedom. Local bodies are given greater freedom in planning. This is all about the planning policy, public policy, overall idea of public policy. See, you just have to understand the different terms. So बाकी सारा questions are going to be bit general in nature. Okay, थोड़ा बहुत generic रहेगा. So you should be able to understand the term. You should मतलब मल्टी लेवल प्लानिंग का मतलब क्या है, डिसेंट्रलाइज प्लानिंग का मतलब क्या है, पब्लिक पॉलिसी का मतलब क्या है, व्हाट आर द डिफरेंट स्टेजेस इन द फॉर्मुलेशन ऑफ पब्लिक पॉलिसी, ये सारी चीजें ओवरऑल आइडिया है तो काफी है. द नेक्स्ट टॉपिक इज सिविल सोसाइटी. Rather than entrusted, not interested, entrusted to central authority. Rather than entrusted to central authority. What are civil society? सिविल सोसाइटी क्या होता है बताइए. We have discussed about this. बहुत पहले हमने डिस्कस कर लिया है. We're talking about the stakeholders of governance. The third stakeholder was civil society. Yes. Not government, not market. The third sector. It includes a very wide area of organization, very wide organizations. Okay, बस दो ही क्राइटेरिया है. इट इज नॉट पार्ट ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट. गवर्नमेंट मतलब इट इज नॉट हैविंग एनी पावर इन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. ठीक है, इट इज नॉट पार्ट ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट. सेकंड वन इज इट इज नॉट देयर टू मेक मनी. द प्राइमरी एजेंडा इज नॉट देयर टू मेक मनी. द प्राइमरी एजेंडा इज समथिंग एल्स एंड इन दैट प्रोसेस इफ दे आर अर्निंग सम मनी एंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिंग अमंग देमसेल्व्स, दैट इज फाइन. बेस्ट एग्जांपल है हमारा सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स, द कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटीज. द प्राइमरी आइडिया इज नॉट मेकिंग मनी, इट इज ब्रिंगिंग पीपल टुगेदर. That is the idea of self-help group as well as cooperatives. Fine. The primary idea is not to make money. It is not for profit. So all such organization which is non-government, not for profit organizations, we call it as the civil society. Civil society, it is very important that they are organized. We call it as organized civil society. Why organized? An unorganized civil society has no power in a democracy. Because the size of the government is very big, the size of the market is very big. In order to influence them, you need to organize yourself. You need to function in a very structured manner. Okay, you need to have certain objective set. You need to have certain group of people. It should function in a organized manner. That is what we call it as organized civil society. Only a organized civil society has the power to influence the government as well as market in a democracy. है ना? So otherwise any individual can form his own civil society, उसका तो power नहीं मिलेगा ना in the society. Who will hear about them? So basically civil society is the third sector of the government, okay, of the administration, governance ka. So please write the definition. Civil society refers to, okay, this is a definition given by World Bank, as per World Bank. Civil society refers to a wide array of organizations community groups, NGOs, labor unions. देखो NGO is just a type of civil society. It is just a type of civil society. What is NGO? उसका characteristic क्या होते हैं? We'll talk about that in detail. We'll discuss about two civil societies specifically. One is NGO, and second one is self-help group. दोनों के बारे में specifically बात करेंगे. Before that, this overall common name is civil society. सबको civil society बोलते हैं. उसका अंदर एक type है NGO. ठीक है? So continue. NGOs, labor unions, indigenous groups, charitable organizations, faith-based organizations, professional associations and foundations. Full stop. It is the third sector of the governance. Full stop. When mobilized, civil society has the power to influence state as well as market. So that is what is civil society. Evolution of civil societies in India. So civil society is a very broad spectrum. It includes almost everything which is other than state and other than market. Even political party is a civil society, because they are there for political mobilization. They are not there to make money. Once a political party becomes part of the government, okay, the party matlab, it is not a particular party, it is the members of that particular party who form the government, right? The people who become the part of the government, they should function separately from the political party. There should be a strict separation, because political party is a civil society. It has a specific agenda. Each political party will have its own agenda, its own objective, जो अचीव करना चाहते हैं, उसको फुलफिल करने के लिए they want to come to a power. But those people of that particular party which are in power, they usually are not associated with the party together when they are in power. Okay, इसका बेस्ट एग्जांपल है, whenever a political party comes into power, whoever is the party president, he will not hold any position in the government. है ना, पार्टी प्रेसिडेंट जो होता है, he will not hold any position in the government, he will not be a minister. So usually that should be the case. Even the present government, previously this has been a convention. Okay, because there should be a separation of the individual party agendas and the government agendas. दोनों separate होना चाहिए, because minister is a government. He is like a part of the executive, right? He should not be part of a particular position in a political party. Of course, he continued to be the member of political party, and if there is a political rallies चलता है, political जो भी उनका meeting चलता है, that is in a political capacity, not as a minister he would participate. Okay, not at the expense of the government he would participate over there. Fine. So that strict separation should be there. So how exactly these civil society evolved in India? So origin can be traced to Societies Registration Act of 1860. Societies Registration Act of 1860. Okay, the year is important. If you try to notice, the year is important. 1860. Why? So this was done intentionally by the British administration. After the 1857 revolt, the British administration felt a need for having a third sector in the governance, so that there is a formal channels of giving out your opinion, venting out the pressure. They felt that there was no such formal channel before that. So जो भी उनका issues था, जो भी उनका whatever their problems are there, so that was not being considered in the administration, and that was continuously building up, and that resulted in the 1857 revolution. Okay, we have seen that there are many different reasons behind the revolution. 1857 का जो सिपाही रिवोल्ट था. So government thought that let's bring a proper channel, official channel through which they can just vent out. उनके हिसाब से they wanted to give a proper channel for just venting out. But for Indians this is a very important step which resulted in the evolution of civil society in India. Initially it took the form of religious reform organizations. Many of the organizations, we have seen many different organizations over there. You will read about this, you would have read about this in modern India. All the different type of religious organizations at that point of time which was trying to socio-religious reform movements का जो था, all of them, they were the best example of civil society. That is what we can say the beginning of the development of civil society in India. Okay, that is socio-religious reform movements. Okay, the organizations which were part of this, and they were given a proper channel to register as a society. Once you are registered as a society, एक गवर्नमेंट प्रोविजन के अंदर आप रजिस्टर कर रहे हो, you are given a formal recognition. आपका जो भी प्रॉब्लम है, इश्यू है, आप रिप्रेजेंट करो उसका, whether the government is working on it or not, that is different, but at least your problems are being recognized, है ना. So then it took a form of political organizations. Best example, Indian National Congress, right? Indian National Congress from 1885 to some extent we can say 1920 tak, whatever the organization which was there. So that is a form of civil society only which was trying for the political mobilization of people. Then comes the Gandhian form of civil society, the Gandhian method of civil society. So what is this Gandhian method of civil society? The various organizations started by the Gandhiji and his disciples in the area of Dalit upliftment, in the area of rural development, khadi promotion, है ना, in the area of village decentralization, gram swaraj. They were taking entirely little bit of different form. अभी तक जो political organization था Indian National Congress, they were not involved much in the other non-political issues, right? So once the Gandhiji came into this picture, he changed this entire idea. He took a entirely different, he gave an entirely different direction to this political organizations, right? That is when even Congress also changed, thoda sa uska bhi form change ho gaya tha. They were more getting involved, they are more aligning themselves with the issues at the local level, right? But at this point of time, they were not into economic activities. They were just helping the people. Okay, Dalit upliftment ho gaya, removal of caste rigidities, temple entry movement ho gaya, various different organizations which we can bring it here. But after 1947, when majority of these organizations who were basically trying to fight against the British administration and trying to reduce the discrimination and trying to bring to their notice about the significance. So now all of them started to get involved in the economic sphere, economic areas. All this civil society I am talking about. Best example है यहाँ पर है हमारा अमूल. Okay, अमूल के बारे में तो सुना होगा. It is Gujarat based cooperative societies. So they are started to get arranged, they get organized in the area of economic sphere and various other cooperatives in agriculture. They are all the examples of civil society only. The difference before and after independence was that before independence it was more about supporting the overall social development. Here it is economic development. And their number increased rapidly by the time we reached 1990. Okay, 1990 we consider it as a landmark year after the liberalization era, after reduced control of the government over the economic activities, as well as in addition to that the government also started to consider these civil society, various different organizations as a part of the development. अभी तक उनका एक रोल था, they were restricted to economic sphere. Now they were made as part of development. They were given more role in development after the liberalization era. कैसे? The government started to realize that it cannot do everything. It should decentralize the power. It should decentralize its function. And at the grassroots level, whether it is district level or at the village level or at the urban local self-government हो गया, in order to make the people aware of their rights and empower them, we need the help of civil society. Either it is a NGO or it is a self-help group or it is any other form of groups. We need these groups in bringing development. The government has realized after 1990. So they have taken them actively as a part of the development now. Now they are being seen as the agents of development. जिनको हम साथ में लेते हैं, particularly best example हमारा tribal region है, where the government has accepted, okay, there are few regions where it cannot reach. It is taking active help of NGOs. There are many regions, interior regions, जहाँ पर government नहीं पहुंच सकते. There are no roads, there are no government schools, there are no government hospitals, but NGOs are running their centers, trying to connect with the people over there. Government has realized it, and now they have made these self-help groups and NGOs as the agents of development along with the government agencies. In terms of identification of beneficiary or in terms of the challenges in the implementation, है ना? So or in terms of the development to help in the implementation of development. For example, कोई multi-purpose प्रोजेक्ट बना रहे हैं, डैम बना रहे हैं, इट वॉन्ट्स टू कंसिडर ओवरऑल बेनिफिट लेके द गवर्नमेंट इज ट्राइंग टू इंप्लीमेंट इट. But definitely there will be local opposition. To make the people understand about the benefits of this kind of project, you need the help of NGOs. You don't take their help, they will go against you. है ना? This is a reality. Fine. So now after 1990 we have started to see them as agents of development. We have made them as part of the development in many of the areas. Right? Overall evolution idea hai. It started from the Societies Registration Act, how exactly the British government brought this overall area. Initially it was a socio-religious reform movement, then it took a political organization, then Gandhian method of this civil society took an entirely different shape. Then after that, after 1947, it was majorly in the economic sphere in terms of cooperatives and various other organizations. But after 1990, in the development, okay, as a agents of development helping the government in implementing, its role has changed. That is evolution. Now we can talk about the different types of civil society. Any doubts here? FCRA के बारे में बात करेंगे. Don't worry, we are yet to reach there. We'll talk in specific about NGOs and self-help groups. In that, I'll bring up this issue of FCRA. Many civil society also get organized as political parties. कांग्रेस के अलावा many political parties come into picture, how they could be seen. So यहाँ का बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल है अभी हमारा जो फार्मर प्रोटेस्ट हो रहा था. The main group, they are planning to form a political organization and they are planning to contest the election also. So definitely there is no restriction. There is no restriction that you cannot contest election. आपको contest करना है नहीं करना है ऐसे कुछ नहीं है. See, as long as you are representing people, as long as you are trying to bring some kind of mobilization of people, है ना, bringing awareness either politically or economically or socially, culturally, everything is allowed in India. There is no issue at all. I don't see any issue. But contesting election के लिए you need specific set of criteria to be fulfilled. If you are contesting as a group, you need to register with the Election Commission as a political party. आपका ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हो जाएगा पॉलिटिकल पार्टी. उसके लिए थोड़ा बहुत रिस्ट्रिक्शन रहेगा. ओके, फंडिंग के हिसाब से ये सारा चीजें, देयर आर सर्टेन रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशन. यू हैव टू जस्ट कंप्लाई विद दैट. अदरवाइज देयर इज नो इश्यू विद a civil society contesting election, but you have to take a form. You cannot contest as a civil society. You have to register as a political party, then you have to contest. If you are not registering as a political party, if you are contesting as an individual, you will be taken as an independent candidate. You will not be given a common symbol, you will not be represented as a common political party at all. आपको इलेक्शन कमीशन के साथ में रजिस्टर करना है, then only you are allowed to, ठीक है, आप कंटेस्ट कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, I have already told you, any political party, any charitable trust, any donor organization, even including media is also considered as a civil society. What is the role of media? They are not there to make money. Of course, abhi to business ho gaya. So you see most of the media, they are there to make money. Okay, that's my individual opinion. Keep it aside. So media should be an organization which is not part of the government. At the same time, it is not there to make money. So that makes them civil society, right? So उनका रोल है कि ओवरऑल एम्पावरमेंट ऑफ सिटीजन, मेकिंग देम अवेयर ऑफ देयर राइट्स, गिविंग देम इंफॉर्मेशन, ओके, गिविंग द न्यूज. सो दैट इज द रोल ऑफ मीडिया. सो दैट इज ऑल्सो ए सिविल सोसाइटी. ऑल ऑफ दीज आर सिविल सोसाइटी ओनली. फाइन. बट सम ऑफ देम आर रेगुलेटेड, सम ऑफ देम शुड फॉलो सर्टेन रूल्स. ओके, एनजीओस में बात करेंगे. एनजीओस का देयर आर सर्टेन सेट ऑफ रेगुलेशंस व्हिच दे हैव टू फॉलो. And not all of them are open. There are certain civil societies which are open to everyone, सब join कर सकते हैं. Certain civil societies which are closed. मतलब the membership is closed only for certain group. Best example, Resident Welfare Organization, RWA, Resident Welfare Association, RWA. Only if you are resident in that particular area you can join that, है ना. उसका मतलब ये सब लोग जाके ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं नहीं. सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप इज ऑल्सो ए सेमी क्लोज्ड. इन दैट पर्टिकुलर रीजन whoever wants to come together they will come together and they form an organization. ऐसा जरूरी नहीं कि सबको ओपन करना है, नहीं. इज दैट क्लियर? एवोल्यूशन का डिक्टेशन जरूरी नहीं है. इट इज नॉट समथिंग वेरी theoretical aspect. Just try to understand the overall evolution, and this part is there in the material. You can just go through that. Okay, material में दिया है, so just go through that. Overall idea याद रखो, काफी है. Types of civil society we can briefly discuss. Okay, various different types of civil society are there. Okay, for example, those civil society who are involved in civil right advocacy. Civil right advocacy groups. Okay, keep writing. Civil right advocacy group whose major agenda is to promote the human rights. ठीक है? whose major agenda is to promote the human right. Either women group हो गया, tribal group हो गया, या दलित members का हो गया, who are trying to bring जो भी ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशन हुआ है, ह्यूमन राइट सप्रेशन हुआ है, तो वहां पर जो चेंज लाना चाहता है, ऑल ऑफ दिम वी कॉल इट एज सिविल राइट एडवोकेसी ग्रुप्स. देन वी हैव सिविल लिबर्टी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस. Civil liberty organizations. Civil liberty and civil rights में क्या डिफरेंस होगा? Civil rights they are specific groups, they target specific area. Women group women का होगा, tribal only tribal region का people होगा. Civil liberty in general, for example, if a group is fighting for right to information, okay, RTA which applies for everyone, so like that, which involves all the different एरियाज, मतलब सबको इंक्लूड करके एक ब्रॉडर स्पेक्ट्रम में उनका जो काम चलता है, दैट इज व्हाट वी कॉल इट एज सिविल लिबर्टी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस. ओके, व्हिच फोकस ऑन द राइट्स ऑफ ऑल द सिटीजंस. देन वी कैन से सिटीजन ग्रुप्स, और फार्मर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस. फार्मर वेलफेयर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हो सकता है. एनजीओज हो सकता है, नॉन गवर्नमेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस. विल टॉक अबाउट दिस, व्हाट इज एनजीओ. देन वी कैन हैव सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स. कोऑपरेटिव्स हो सकता है. व्हाट आर कोऑपरेटिव्स? सो बेसिकली कोऑपरेटिव्स इज ए फॉर्म ऑफ सिविल सोसाइटी ओनली, where a group of people have come together for one particular agenda. Economically, usually they are having the agenda of economic development. Okay, economic development, but it is not just to make money, it is overall upliftment of the entire section. They are coming together, they are forming a society, cooperative society, and that will do some activity, so that there is overall upliftment of this entire people who are involved in this particular organization, as well as overall they also try to achieve some kind of social development in that particular region also. Okay, cooperatives हो सकता है. Then labor unions. RWA, resident welfare associations. Even political parties, religious groups, all of them you can include here. So this is overall about civil society, in general about civil society, I hope you have got the idea what is civil society. It is basically a broader spectrum of all the organizations outside the government and outside the market. Okay, with the outside the money motive, outside the government, जो भी organization है, all of them are basically civil society. In that, two important ones we are going to discuss. One is NGO, another one is self-help group. इसके ऊपर specific questions आते हैं, आया भी है, so we'll discuss about that. Fine. And yeah, there is a national policy on voluntary sector. Okay, national policy on voluntary sector, which talks about the role of civil society only. Okay, voluntary organization, वो भी सुना होगा. You might hear this term, voluntary organization, which is equivalent to civil society. उसी को ही बोलते हैं. So there is a national policy on voluntary organization which was brought in 2007. 2007 का था, पुराना है, and इसका objectives भी ज़्यादा कुछ specific नहीं है, बहुत generic type है. So not a very important one. Just go through this. It's there in your material. Okay. Just try to remember few of the major objectives. Okay. जिसमें most important one है कि government specifically बोला है कि government should support the formation of these voluntary organizations. VO को support करना है. And that is where the government has given a formal recognition. Okay. Their role is very important in development and growth. है ना, ऐसे formally recognize किया है ना. So that is why. So वो एक important part है. Otherwise ज़्यादा कुछ specific objectives नहीं है. Just go through that as a part of your this unit. Okay, it's there in the material, just see that once. Let's take a short break, and after the break we'll talk about both NGO and self-help group. Okay, so and that would be the last part of governance. So let's talk about NGOs. Non-governmental organizations. So technically if you go by the word to word meaning of NGO, any civil society is basically NGO only, right? So इसलिए बहुत लोग confused हो जाते हैं, NGO is a very broad spectrum. No, but it is not a very broad spectrum. Civil society is the broader spectrum. The broader term is civil society. NGO is a very specific organization, okay, non-governmental organization. A civil society which is organized in structure and specialized in function. A civil society which is organized in structure and specialized in function is called as NGO, non-governmental organization. Don't go by the word to word meaning. So word to word मैंने बता दिया, it includes, it becomes everything of जो भी सिविल सोसाइटी हो जाएगा, सब कुछ एनजीओ ही हो जाएगा. नो, everything is not NGO. NGO is those civil society which are organized in structure and specialized in function. Organized मतलब क्या है? It should function as one particular organization. It should have clearly set structure. Okay, one who is leading the organization, people who are formal part of this organization, है ना? इसका recognize होना चाहिए, registration होना चाहिए, government के अंदर registered होना चाहिए. So that is what is functioning in a organized manner. It should have its own office, है ना? People who are working in that office. Similar. जैसे कि we have a private company in the same way, that is what we are called as organization, right? But only that it is not a private company, not a government company. It is a organized in structure, specialized in function. मतलब each NGO will have its own स्पेशलाइज्ड फंक्शन, एक स्पेसिफिक एरिया में काम करता है. इट इज नॉट लिमिटेड इसी एरिया में काम करने, ऐसा कुछ जरूरी नहीं है, बट जो भी एरिया में काम करोगे वो बताना पड़ेगा आपको, इन विच एरिया यू आर फंक्शनिंग. यू आर स्पेसिफिकली वर्किंग इन ए पर्टिकुलर एरिया. NGOs who are involved in environment, NGOs who are involved in poverty eradication, NGOs who are involved in health provisions, ऐसे specific area में काम करता है. So that is what we call it as NGO. Okay, you can write the definition. A civil society when organized in structure and specialized in function, takes the form of NGO. So there are certain characteristics of NGO. Let's discuss about that. What are the characteristics of NGO? So NGO is basically an organization which is outside the government, right? So organization outside the government which is made up of group of people. Not one person cannot, a single person cannot form an NGO. Group of people outside the government, right? With some common objective, they have come together and they have formed an organization. Okay, group of people with common objective. Then they work in the area of social development. That common objective is usually in the area of social development, not economic development, not political development, ये सारा अलग है. Religious development ये सारा अलग है. Economic development है में आता है हमारा cooperatives, trusts, right? Political development में political parties, religious development में religious groups, religious organization, है ना? Social development is in the area of social development, मतलब society का जो भी issues है, पॉवर्टी, अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट, है ना, एजुकेशन, रिसोर्सेस, रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट, ये सारा चीजें सोशल डेवलपमेंट में आते हैं. एंड दे आर नॉट अफिलिएटेड टू पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज. They are not affiliated to any particular political party. If they are affiliated to particular political party, they become part of the political party, then it will no more remain as a NGO. Political party has a specific agenda. Okay, political awareness बढ़ाना है, political mobilization होना चाहिए, and also they want to come into power. They want to capture the power, right? NGO, they will never come into power. The overall idea is not to come into power. By the time they form a political party, their nature changes from NGO to political party. That is entirely different. They will no more remain an NGO. Okay? And of course it is not for profit. They are not there to make profit. Okay, through any of their activities, there might be economic transaction involved over there. There might be some economic activity, but the overall idea is not to make profit over there. And they are self-governing. Self-governing, basically it says that they are not part of the government. You know, if it is any part of the government, any organization of the government, in that case it will be governed by the government. जो भी government होगा, it will control their function. जो भी उसका leader होगा, जो भी the president of or director of this organization जो भी है, they would be appointed by the government. No, here they would appoint themselves. Okay, or a person whoever is founder, he would act as a director or whatever it is. Overall, there is no interference of the government in their functioning. That is what is self-governing. Is that clear? Any idea how many NGOs are there in India? How many NGOs are there in India? Any idea? No, there is no specific number actually. There are various different sources which quotes different numbers. So one common estimate says that there are nearly around 35 to 40 lakh NGOs. 35 to 40 lakh NGOs. Yes, it's in lakhs. There are so many NGOs. And NGO is one of the very favorite work of those who are retired from the government and those who could not get into government. You know, somehow they want to associate with the developmental work. Of course, many of them are genuinely. Many of them are out of self-obligation that you want to be part of the government, you could not be part of the government, so let's do something else, directly, indirectly कुछ करते हैं government का जो काम होगा. So with that intention, many of the students will come, जो हमारा civil service aspirants है, particularly one who could not clear. Many of them, they become part of the various different NGOs. So what are the different types of NGOs? We have three major categories of NGOs. One is developmental NGOs. Second, research NGOs. Third one, activist NGOs. Okay, we have three major categories of NGOs: developmental NGOs, research NGOs and activist NGOs. So what do you mean by developmental NGOs? Those who are involved in developmental work. Development is actually the work of the government: poverty eradication, employment generation, skill development, health service provision, जो development work होता है. So that is actually the work of the government. But of course, government cannot reach out to every different area. There would always be the lacuna, always be the absence of government in some of the regions. Wherever there is absence of government, so there these NGOs will come into picture. Okay, they are not providing any alternative service. They are just trying to fill in the gaps. There is no issue at all. In fact, government themselves support many such NGOs, developmental NGOs, because it has understood that we need such kind of NGOs. है ना, ये तो जरूरी है. That is what is developmental NGOs. Examples of developmental NGOs: the very famous Smile Foundation. Smile Foundation, if any of you have heard. Smile Foundation is a very famous NGO which is working in the education sector, education for underprivileged. Fine. और हमारा विजन IAS का भी as a part of the overall organization, के overall the umbrella organization, उसका एक part है. We have an NGO that is Paras India. If any of you have heard Paras India. So that is also an NGO. So that NGO is working in the area of again education and skill development both in Delhi as well as Chhattisgarh. So we are trying to provide some of the जो backward areas में people who are not at all aware about the competitive exam, we are trying to train them. Okay, of course, as a part of our CSR commitment. ऐसे बहुत सारा NGOs है. So they are all working in the developmental area. That is what is developmental NGOs. What are research NGOs? So research NGOs are basically, they are not involved in any kind of developmental work. They are not doing any developmental work, but they are helping the developmental work through research. Okay, research के through. In terms of the policy analysis हो गया, or in terms of giving feedback, or majorly in environmental regions, environmental issues में जो research चाहिए, providing the data with for the government, है ना, providing the feedback, how much of the program has been helpful, how much it has not, ये सारा feedback. So that is what is research NGOs. Okay, best example हमारा जो प्रथम NGO है. Have you heard of this Pratham? Of course you might have heard. You would be reading about its report in social justice, which comes out with ASER survey, annual survey of educational report. Okay, ASER सुना होगा. That is an NGO which is working in research. इनका कोई developmental काम नहीं है. They will just do the survey and give the report. So all such NGOs we call them as research NGOs. They are majorly in environmental areas, जहाँ पर बहुत सारे NGOs बहुत कुछ research कर रहे हैं in terms of the pollution, in terms of the climate change, global warming, उनका जो output है, क्योंकि many of the times the government is not actively involved in that area. What is the third type? Activist क्या है? They are not directly involved in any kind of work. They are not involved in the research also, but they are involved in activism, mobilizing the people. They are involved in activism, that is mobilizing the people, making them aware of their rights, agitating on behalf of them, protesting on behalf of them, bringing more awareness to the people, as well as reaching out to the government about the issues of the people. That is what is activism. है ना, RTA activism के लिए we had this मजदूर किसान शक्ति संगठन. If any of you have heard, मजदूर किसान शक्ति संगठन, which is the organization which was fighting for RTA and which was majorly responsible for bringing RTA in India. Okay, it's an organization based in Rajasthan. मजदूर किसान शक्ति संगठन. So that is what is activist NGO. Even Narmada Bachao Andolan, that is also an example of activist NGO. Is that clear? So overall the idea is they should have a organized structure. Their structure should be organized and they should have a specific function. So that is what we call it as NGO. Roles of NGOs in governance. Role of NGOs in governance, in development. So what are the different roles? Various different NGOs work in those areas where government is absent. Where government is absent. For example, interior tribal areas, Naxal affected regions. Okay, one thing, government has certain limitations because it has no unlimited supply of resources. There would always be shortage of resources for the government. So कुछ जगह में development होता है, कुछ जगह में नहीं होता है. Fine, various reasons, वो सब ठीक है. But there are certain areas where there is no government present. Government मतलब not the law and order. Law and order of course present रहता है, but the development is lacking. The government is not able to provide education. No, the government is not able to provide health service over there. तो वहां पर हमारा NGOs काम करता है. Okay, best example where the tribal areas, the interior tribal areas are there, where even the government is not able to reach. There, NGOs function very well. And then क्या क्या काम है बताइए, आप लोग बताइए. What do you understand? What are the different roles of NGOs? ठीक है, एनवायरमेंटल प्रोटेक्शन तो बहुत बड़ा एरिया है, उसके बारे में डिटेल में बात करने, ठीक है, वो एक है. देन activist NGOs, very good. Activism. Fighting social evils, good. Making people aware of their rights, that is activism. Exerting pressure on the government, good. Tribal societies, tribal rights, helping the needy, ठीक है. और बताइए. ठीक है, मेजरली आपको पता है. लेट्स ट्राई टू लिस्ट इट डाउन इन ए कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव मैनर. आई टोल्ड यू वेयर द गवर्नमेंट इज एब्सेंट or where the government resources are not sufficient. The government resources are not sufficient. Here you can write the example of health, education, etc. Okay, बहुत सारे जगह में there is a lacuna of government. Absent ही totally absent अलग है, resources insufficient भी अलग है. Okay, then fighting social evils. Okay, for example, implementation of PCPNDT Act. Okay, that is targeting the female child, the girl child, targeting the girl child during the time of pregnancy. The sex selection techniques and the implementation of this PCPNDT Act, वहाँ पर बहुत सारा है. And even the dowry prohibition, child marriage, child labor, all of these you can give the example where fighting the social evils, of course the government will support. Then activism, various different types of activism, fighting for the civil rights, civil liberty, political rights, economical rights. Okay, best example, Right to Information Act, right? And even जो अन्ना हजारे आंदोलन for bringing Lokpal, है ना? And even the Forest Rights Act, various NGOs are involved over there bringing Forest Rights Act for the tribal people. All of this, we call it as rights activism. Then implementation of welfare schemes. Implementation of welfare schemes. The government, the various welfare schemes, if it wants to implement in a very effective manner, it should take the support of NGOs. Because NGOs work at the grassroots level, they are very good at identifying the local problems as well as identifying the beneficiaries, and to ensure that the benefits reach the maximum population, NGOs are going to be very helpful. Best example हमारा MG नरेगा, we have discussed in various different topics. The role of NGOs, social audit में हो सकता है, bringing accountability हो सकता है ना? So all of this you can write here, welfare schemes में. In rehabilitation of affected people due to developmental projects. Okay, एक तो to make them aware of the benefits of developmental projects. दूसरा, to bring their concern to the government. उनका जेन्युइन जो कंसर्न होता है जिसके लिए अपोजिशन चल रहा है उसको गवर्नमेंट की तरफ पहुंचाने के लिए. तीसरा, टू हेल्प द रिहेबिलिटेशन ऑफ पीपल फ्रॉम वन रीजन टू अनदर, जो भी अफेक्टेड कम्युनिटी है, टू प्रोवाइड देम विद अ बेटर लैंड और हाउस और एम्प्लॉयमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटी ड्यूरिंग द रिहेबिलिटेशन. द एनजीओज आर गोइंग टू बी वेरी हेल्पफुल. ठीक है, रिहेबिलिटेशन हो गया. And majorly environmental protection. What are the different roles of NGOs in environmental protection? पहला तो हमने ऑलरेडी डिस्कस कर दिया in terms of research. Okay, in terms of research, giving the government with data and the input. Right? So there are various NGOs working at both national level, international level, who are trying to find out the data and the evidences related to the environmental degradation, pollution, climate change, ozone depletion, global warming, है ना? बहुत जगह में रिसर्च में काम कर रहा है. So their reports, their outputs are taken as inputs for government policies and programs in the context of environmental degradation. Right? That is research. Second, activism. So activism is a very broader area. So whatever you are mentioning in terms of awareness generation, in terms of bringing the deprived ones to the mainstream, है ना? So in terms of reminding the government of their obligation, all of this come under the activism only. Activism in the context of environmental protection is to make the people aware of the issues of environment, है ना? And to help them in fighting for their justice. If there is any kind of developmental project which is degrading the environment, government को, the voice of the local, who is going to make these voice of the local to reach the government? NGOs, है ना? नर्मदा बचाओ आंदोलन. So there are various issues associated with that in terms of environmental protection as well as the rehabilitation of the people. So इसलिए वो थोड़ा बहुत फेमस हुआ था. और इवन जो हमारा चिपको मूवमेंट, उसमें जो एनजीओ इन्वॉल्व हुआ था. Fine. So that is what is activism. Then, other than activism, coordination and conduction of international summits. ये जो इंटरनेशनल समिट्स चलता है, इंटरनेशनल जो कॉन्फ्रेंस चलता है, okay, we have this COP, Conference of Parties. So do you think it is only the government which is involved over there? A large number of NGOs are involved here who are actually making this possible. You leave it to the government, every government will look after themselves. बोलते हैं कि नहीं, हमारा डेवलपमेंट, हमारा ग्रोथ, हमारा रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, हमें करना ही पड़ेगा. ठीक है. So it's basically many of these international organizations who are successful in bringing all the different governments to one particular place and discuss among themselves and make them come to an agreement. Paris agreement या उसके पहले क्योटो हुआ था. The international NGOs, particularly ये जो environmental NGOs है, they play a huge role in all of this. Okay, in terms of treaties हो गया, agreements हो गया, जो भी जो conclusion हो रहा है, they are all to a very great extent helped by these international NGOs. And also to help the government in conservation efforts, environmental conservation efforts. For example, tiger census. Okay, India में tiger census, they are conducted with the help of WWF, right? And even the forest survey, many NGOs are involved. Even tribal rehabilitation, environmental impact assessment. जो गवर्नमेंट का environmental protection का जो काम है, तो वहां पर these NGOs will come into picture. Okay, they help the government in doing that. Okay, you can write few of the examples of NGOs involved in environmental protection. बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल है हमारा ग्रीन पीस. सुना होगा आप लोगों ने ग्रीन पीस. WWF, वर्ल्ड वाइड फंड फॉर नेचर. WWF, बर्ड लाइफ इंटरनेशनल, बर्ड लाइफ इंटरनेशनल, BNHS, बॉम्बे नेचुरल हिस्ट्री सोसाइटी, BNHS. In fact, even TERI, 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 the Energy Research Institute, that is also an NGO. These are the different role of NGOs in governance. Let's talk about the issues associated with NGOs and finally the suggestions for their improvement. Okay, suggestions in the working of NGOs. So what are the issues or challenges for that matter in the working of NGOs? Anyone? No. A civil servant cannot run an NGO. No. That is totally no. A civil servant cannot have his own private business in his own name, and he cannot have NGO also. The civil servant is part of the government. You are going to serve in the government. But you can sometimes work on behalf of NGO. And sometimes for that you need to take permission from the department. Okay? You cannot take any money for that. And it's not like you will have your own NGO. कोई दूसरा NGO में जाके थोड़ा बहुत अवेयरनेस जनरेट करना या कोई प्रोग्राम करना, वो सब ठीक है. But you cannot have your own NGO. फंडिंग का बहुत सारा प्रॉब्लम है. पॉलिटिसाइजेशन यस, मिसयूज ऑफ फंड, लैक ऑफ वॉलंटियर्स, पॉलिटिकल इंटरफेरेंस, लाइसेंस फॉर फॉरेन फंडिंग यस, रिसेंटली भी न्यूज में था, विल टॉक अबाउट दैट. इंटरनल डेमोक्रेसी वेरी गुड. और कुछ इश्यूज है? Foreign funding yes, lack of professionalism yes. चलो we'll talk about this one by one. Okay, major issue सबको पता है फंडिंग के बारे में. We'll discuss about this funding. See funding का there are two areas. One is lack of funding. Okay, एक हो गया lack of funding. दूसरा हो गया misuse of funding. दोनों इश्यू है. लैक ऑफ फंडिंग इज वन इश्यू, सेकेंड वन इज मिस यूज ऑफ फंडिंग. पहले वन लैक ऑफ फंडिंग. मेनी ऑफ द एनजीओज दे डोंट गेट मच फंडिंग फ्रॉम गवर्नमेंट, प्राइवेट. गवर्नमेंट के तरफ से तो ज्यादा कुछ सपोर्ट नहीं है, ये तो है. प्राइवेट के तरफ बे सपोर्ट होता है, बट देयर आर टू मच ऑफ रिस्ट्रिक्शंस फ्रॉम द गवर्नमेंट एंड. ओके, टू मच ऑफ रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस टू बी फॉलोड विच आर वेरी वेरी स्पेसिफिक. अगर ये फॉलो नहीं हुआ तो यू विल बी डिनाइड, you cannot take funding, ऐसे rules है. Okay, one such rule is Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, FCRA. Okay, in the end we'll discuss about the FCRA and their recent amendment जो भी है उसके बारे में बात करेंगे. But overall idea of FCRA is to regulate the foreign funding coming to India. It's not like any organization working in India can take foreign funding. There are certain rules and regulations which it has to follow and fulfill. तब भी वो ले सकता है. So that makes the availability of funding itself less. First area. Second is misuse of funding. Misuse of funding क्या है? Misuse of funding is basically many of the NGOs are there who are totally working just to convert black money to white money. ठीक है, पूरा duplicate bogus NGOs है who are not doing any kind of work on the ground. They just take the donations in the name of donation, they just take and उसको बोलते हैं ठीक है हमारा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए डोनेशन मिला है, हम यहाँ पर स्पेंड कर दिया है, ऐसे बोल के they just use this as a channel of converting black money to white money. There are many bogus NGOs. इसलिए government is trying to bring some regulation, and in many of the areas that regulation itself has resulted in the lack of funding for NGOs. That is related to funding. Second one is related to the human resource. Okay, please keep writing. इसके बारे में हमारा मटेरियल में डिटेल में दिया है, so that's why I'm not going to dictate here because little bit generic point. So discussion is more important. आपका जो the different dimensions which we have to bring in answer, that is important here rather than just writing it down. Okay, first one is related to funding, both aspects, lack of funding and misuse of funding मैंने बता दिया. Second one is human resource. What is the issue with human resource? So the people who are involved in NGOs, they are not specifically trained to work in NGOs. The working of NGO culture in India, even though it is organized, it has not totally taken a formal role in India. They are not developed to that. Of course, there are few NGOs who are totally professional, totally functional in a very formal setup, but many of the NGOs are totally informal in setup. The human resource, that is the people who are working in NGOs, they don't have any kind of special training. They don't work professionally, just as a extra work without any kind of payment. जब खाली है तब आ जाते हैं NGO में काम करने, ऐसे नहीं चलता है. NGOs, the human resource is very very important. Without the support of human resource, NGOs cannot grow. We need proper training of the personnel. At the same time, they also should work functionally. So they also should work professionally. ठीक है? So human resource में there is a lack of human resource. Okay, that is the parity between urban region and rural region. Many of the NGOs who are working in urban regions, people come voluntarily participate in that, but rural regions there is not much of participation. Second one, the lack of professionalism. Okay, because we know that it is just seen as a charity in India. ऐसे charity जैसे काम करते हैं. So एक तो they don't have a specific training to work in NGO. Second thing is they are not paid professionally also. Fine. Then distribution is also another issue. NGOs are not distributed uniformly all throughout the year. There are certain regions जहां पर बहुत ज़्यादा concentrated है, most of the metro cities. Because the reason is similar, वहां पर problems भी ज़्यादा है. At the same time, there are many bogus NGOs. इसलिए metro cities there are more concentration. Many of the regions, of course, there are many NGOs who are honestly doing their work. बहुत सारा काम चल रहा है, but फिर भी there is a deficiency. They are not sufficient. Then accountability of NGOs, very important. The way NGOs function in India, I told you they are not very professional. Even though they have to be organized in function, they are not very organized in structure, sorry. So because of lack of professionalism, there is a lack of accountability also, because they are taking from the public, money from the foreign organizations, foreign funding. बहुत सारा पैसा आता है. Okay, so you have no idea how much of money is involved. Huge amount of money is involved here. And it is very important that there is accountability. Accountability मतलब क्या है? कहाँ कितना पैसा आ रहा है, कहाँ पर खर्चा हो रहा है? They should be clean. But since many of these NGOs are used as a channels for converting black money into white, there is not much of transparency in their functioning. There is no accountability. Then lack of internal democracy. Because this is an organization should have a democratic process, democratic manner in which it should function, but most of the NGOs do not. They are run by one particular person, they are run by families, business organizations, just for the namesake of spending money, or just for the namesake of having a good reputation in the society. So there is no proper way, proper manner in which these organizations function. Lack of internal democracy. So what are the suggestions? अच्छा, ये सारा suggestions नहीं है, ये सारा issues है. Suggestions. यही जो प्रॉब्लम है, वी नीड टू ब्रिंग द सॉल्यूशन, राइट? Lack of professionalism, most important one. We need to bring professionalism in the functioning of NGOs in India. इसलिए जो भी graduates है coming out from the universities, we need to take them professionally, train them and make it as a profession for them to work in NGOs. तभी वो grow करेगा अच्छे तरीके से. We should stop seeing NGOs as some extra work, charity work, right? We need to bring more professionalism and we need to pay these people who are working in NGOs at par with the private organizations. Then only they start to work in a more professional manner. Okay, first important suggestion is bringing professionalism. Second issue, funding. The government should liberalize the funding and liberalize the strict regulation wherever it is possible, and of course we need more accountability also from the NGOs. It is said that NGOs should practice what they preach. They fight for government's accountability, they fight for government's transparency, but they don't function in the same way, right? So दोनों के तरफ से काम होना चाहिए. Government should also liberalize the funding. At the same time, NGOs should also function in more transparent and accountable manner. Of course, should be regulated, है ना, गवर्नमेंट रेगुलेशन होना चाहिए, बट इट शुड नॉट टारगेट द एनजीओस फंक्शनिंग स्पेसिफिकली, है ना. सो मेनी ऑफ सम ऑफ द टाइम्स द गवर्नमेंट स्पेसिफिकली टारगेट सर्टेन एनजीओस. ओके, रिसेंटली कुछ रिपोर्ट आया था, नॉट रिसेंटली मतलब 2-3 साल पहले आईबी का कुछ रिपोर्ट था, दैट मेनी ऑफ द एनजीओस आर इन्वॉल्व्ड इन environmental activism and they are specifically targeting the developmental works, ये बोल के कि इंडिया में डेवलपमेंट नहीं होना चाहिए. The allegation was that they are the NGOs funded by USA and Western European countries who are basically trying to reduce the development in India. इसलिए जो भी डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट होगा वहां पर आके ये लोग प्रोटेस्ट करते हैं, ऐसा कुछ आईबी का रिपोर्ट था. ऐसे स्पेसिफिकली टारगेट नहीं करना है विदाउट एविडेंस. You bring regulations, you bring rules, you make them transparent. जब ये रिपोर्ट आया था, even the government acted on it and they cut off the funding for many of the NGOs. बोला है कि नहीं, इनका ट्रांसपेरेंट नहीं है, प्रोसेस नहीं है, तो पूरा कट ऑफ कर देता. फिर इश्यू केम अप इन पार्लियामेंट. ओके, दे सेड इतने सारे एनजीओस को आपने कैसे फंडिंग कट ऑफ कर दिया. फिर गवर्नमेंट बोला कि नहीं हमने कट ऑफ नहीं किया, तो इफ दे सबमिट द रिपोर्ट विल अलाउ देम. ऐसा कुछ हुआ था. दे शुड नॉट restrict the funding अलो करना चाहिए, but at the same time they should ensure there is some kind of following of rules, transparency होना चाहिए. Okay, there should be a fine balance between them. And of course these NGOs should develop and make use of the technologies. जैसे कि many of the NGOs who are working in the rural areas, tribal areas, they are totally ground based, and in the coming days, in the present days as well as in the future, if at all there is any this kind of issue, pandemic हो गया, lockdown हो गया, इनका काम पूरा रुक जाता है. They should make use of the technology and they should develop their online presence. They should widen the area of working. They should reform the area, the method of working, so that they are more technology friendly, which are not. So technology का एंगल भी यहाँ पर इंक्लूड कर सकते हो आप लोग. Okay, FCRA, I'll take it up in the end. So this is all overall related to NGOs. Let's also talk about self-help groups. What is a self-help group? How it is different from NGO? Any of you have seen a self-help group, or any of you have been part of self-help group in India? Yes, today is the last class. We have just self-help groups to cover. Since the class started a little bit late, so let's try to extend the class a little bit, 15 minutes. We'll be done with this. What is a self-help group? Any of you have seen a self-help group or have been a part of self-help group? You might have seen. Metro cities में थोड़ा बहुत कम है, but if it is tier 2 cities or the rural background, you would see most commonly. Yes, basically you might have seen in particularly rural areas, this idea of self-help group involves few of the members coming together and forming a group. Few of the members, particularly usually they are the ladies members. Usually they are led by women, but it is not restricted to women only, but majorly they are led by women. They will come together, they will form a group, and they will contribute some money to the group. Okay, these members of this group, the ladies, usually ladies, they come together, they form a simple group and they will contribute. Okay, चलो जब भी हम मिलते हैं, हर हफ्ते मिलते हैं, let's contribute 100 rupees each. Okay, let's say there are 15 people, so every week they are collecting 1500, right? 1500 rupees. In 1 month they are collecting 6000 rupees. So they are making a fund, collective fund hoga. From this fund, whenever a group members require some money for any kind of their own personal, कोई भी काम हो सकता है, it can be any kind of personal work, it is not restricted. So they will take loan. Okay, loan लेगा, फिर वापस repay कर देगा. So in a way they are coming together, they are contributing, they are helping themselves in raising a fund, and they are helping themselves in mobilization of fund, raising money, loans, and that activity continues. If they continue for some long period of time, now the government has formalized it. Any self-help group, ऐसे जो active group है, if it is existing for more than 6 months, 6 months के लिए they are existing, they are active, in that case they can register with a particular bank. Local में जो एक particular assigned bank होता है, वहां पर जाके एक group जैसे उनका एक common account bank account खुलेगा. Okay, a common bank account will be opened, and whatever the savings they have, they will put it in that, and they will regularly transact using that bank account. If they function in this way for 6 months, they can take loan from the bank also. That is what is self-help group bank linkage program, SHG bank linkage program. ये गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से बोल दिया है. ठीक है, they will take the money, they will use either for their own personal use or for a collective economic activity. In many of the places the group will start a economic activity. Okay, कोई भी local business हो गया या traditional business हो गया, they want to develop as a group, they will get the loan here. So overall it is a medium, a channel of economic empowerment, and majorly of women. It is not restricted to women, but majorly they involve women only. ठीक है, such group we call it as self-help group, a group formed to help themselves, which is now supported by the government. Along with the SHG bank linkage program, many of the government schemes and programs, they are helping this SHGs. Particularly ये जो हमारा National Rural Livelihood Mission है, NRLM, National Rural Livelihood Mission, now the National Urban Livelihood Mission. So they give funding to these self-help groups only. They don't give funding to the individuals, because there is more accountability in such kind of groups. है ना? If you give money to them, they are accountable to each other. It is very easy to take it back. Of course, money तो ऐसे ही पैसे नहीं देंगे. They give it as a loan at a very low interest rate. Along with that, they will also give some kind of skill development, some kind of encouragement, है ना, marketing strategy. ये सारा चीजें थोड़ा सा उनको empower कर देंगे. So that is what is self-help groups. Usually self-help group has certain common characteristics. You know, what are the basic characteristics of self-help group? They are usually from a homogeneous group. मतलब they would be from a similar socio-economic background, right? They should know each other, they should be friendly with each other, तभी वो ग्रुप बनेगा. ऐसा कोई रूल नहीं है कि ग्रुप बनना है सबको इंक्लूड करना है, ऐसे जरूरी नहीं है. ठीक है, देश ए सिमिलर सोशियो इकोनॉमिक बैकग्राउंड में जो लोग रहते हैं, दे विल कम टुगेदर एंड दे फॉर्म ए ग्रुप. ठीक है, एंड इट शुड कंटेन around 10 to 20 people, not more than that. Around 10 to 20 people होना चाहिए each of this group. And in that there would be one person who is leading this group who would act as a leader. Okay, but otherwise there is no specific powers, authority, ऐसे कुछ नहीं prescribed नहीं है. They will just guide the others. Okay, one of the well-educated person will take the lead. And they function democratically. Everyone will decide कैसे काम करना है, कैसे पैसे देना है, कैसे लेना है, and अगर if they decide to do some kind of economic activity, that is also decided within the group itself. So that is how the self-help groups function. In many of the regions, rural areas में बहुत जगह में ये self-help groups active है. Okay, please write the definition. What is self-help group? See, बहुत लोग बहुत जगह में है actually, हमें पता नहीं है. So if you ask your mother, sister, so majorly who are not much busy in urban life, है ना, so usually tier 2 cities में, tier 3 cities में जो होते हैं, so they would have their own groups. Okay, पहले informal हो रहा था, अभी उसको थोड़ा सा formalized channel बना दिया है. Chit funds are not self-help groups. Chit funds अलग ही है. Okay, please write the definition. SHG, that is self-help group, is defined. SHG is defined as a self-governed, peer-controlled, that is one another, okay, peer-controlled, peer-controlled information group of people, self-governed, peer-controlled information group of people with similar socio-economic background, and having a desire to collectively perform a common purpose. So chit funds are different. Chit funds क्या होता है? Chit funds are basically, they are totally in the purpose of collecting money. है ना, local chit funds होता है, registered chit funds होता है, both formal and informal जो भी होगा, that's only money. People will come together, they will raise money, है ना, so हर महीने कोई एक को उससे जो पैसा देते हैं, बाकी सब हर महीने उसको देते जाना है. So that is only chit, with the only intention of raising money. Okay, there will be one person who is running it and he will collect the money and he will disperse the money among themselves. This is not SHG. SHG is more about economic empowerment. It involves the skill training, it involves a common economic activity if it requires, if they want to. They can start their own organization, they can run it as a common platform, they can get the loan from the government. That is, SHG is totally different. Chit fund is totally different. Chit fund is totally economic in terms of money, business only. It's a kind of business only. Now, okay, next, objectives. Objectives of self-help groups. Okay, लिखते जाओ. We have discussed about this. It helps in financial mobilization. Through developing a common fund. It helps in financial mobilization through developing a common fund. Helps in bringing financial literacy. हेल्प्स इन ब्रिंगिंग फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी. बहुत लोगों को ऐसे बैंक कैसे हैंडल करना है, अकाउंट कैसे हैंडल करना है, ये पता ही नहीं होता है. थ्रू दिस कॉमन ग्रुप दे विल कम टू नो. ओके, देन दे आर encouraged to have their own personal accounts. Fine, that is financial literacy. So when they are coming together, I told you many of the government programs encourages them and gives them skill development. Skill development का भी angle है. It helps in skill development and self-employment. Builds social capital. Builds social capital, that is relationship among the different people in the society, that becomes stronger when you are coming together as a group. And once the people, once particularly the women who are getting to know about this, they start to involve in decision making within the family also, right? Usually now their role in decision making is less because they are not financially independent. Once they start to mobilize the money, once they start to mobilize the money, once they are getting involved in these formal channels, so they also get to know about how exactly the things are functioning. They will also want to participate in the decision making in the family, right? So it's a channel of women empowerment. Women empowerment. Helps in taking decision making roles. Helps in taking decision making roles in family and society. Examples of SHGs. So SHG pehle, this concept of SHG is there in India for a very long period of time. We don't need to have this kind of concept to encourage women to form groups. Rural areas में जाओ, women club is the most common thing. अपना ही friend circle रहता है, अपना ही group रहता है, ये तो most common है. But the idea of self-help group gave a formal channel, a formal identity to such kind of women groups. Okay, so it was in 1980s. There was an NGO called as Mirada. There was an NGO called as Mirada. Okay, Mirada full form is Mysore Resettlement and Development Agency. Mysore Resettlement and Development Agency. So this NGO was working in the area of rural development in southern part of Karnataka, and they were encouraging the women groups to form such kind of self-help groups. Okay, they were encouraging these women groups to form self-help groups, and they were very, very successful in establishment of a large number of self-help groups in this particular region. Okay, southern Karnataka region. By seeing their success, the government came up with a pilot project, okay, which was supported by RBI. So this Mirada क्या कर रहे थे? They were encouraging the women groups to form association and to open the bank accounts in a common, जो भी local bank है वहां पर bank account खोलो, तो अपना savings वहां पर डालो, फिर use करो, ऐसे they were encouraging them. Seeing the success of this particular initiative of Mirada, RBI in 1992 started a pilot project. Okay, RBI in 1992 started a pilot project under NABARD. Okay, under NABARD, a pilot project called as SHG Bank Linkage Program. SHG Bank Linkage Program. Seeing the success of Mirada, ठीक है, So in this they targeted linking 500 self-help groups with the bank. पहले भी था, now they are trying to make it a formal channel. So once you link these self-help groups with the bank, they said जो भी self-help group है जो बैंक अकाउंट खोला है, ऑपरेट किया है for 6 months, they will get a loan. Okay, एक minimum amount loan मिलता है, they will see the eligibility सारे देके, but they will get a loan from the bank, not in the individual name but from the group's name. So that is SHG bank linkage program. Initially RBI started this project in 1992 to link 500 SHGs and it became very successful. They were very happy with the outcome of this program. Then they extended to all over India. Initially it was started as a pilot project, then they extended to all over India. In 1996 they extended this project to all over India and they made it open to everyone. जो भी local region में कोई भी बैंक है, whether it is government bank, a private bank or public bank, any self-help groups can link with the bank. They can open a saving bank account over there. They can operate. If they operate for 6 months, the bank should give them loan. They are eligible for loan. उसके बाद में, as I told you, government made them as part of this self-employment program. Okay, we have this Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana. 1997 में this program was there. Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana. (1999). When the government started this self-employment program, they majorly used these self-help groups as a channels for bringing self-employment in the rural areas. And this was changed. The same Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana was changed to National Rural Livelihood Mission in 2011. Okay, this was the new self-employment program announced in 2011. And यहाँ पर भी the government said that it will give loans to the self-help groups. Not only loans, even they will train them professionally, give them skills and give them the capacity to handle these kind of self-employment opportunities. So that is, from that point of time they have come into prominence. And recently they have also been included as part of PSL, priority sector lendings. Okay, so that is very low interest rate में उनको लोन मिलेगा. And any idea how many self-help groups are there? There are nearly 80 lakh self-help groups in India. 80 lakh self-help groups in India. And one of the very famous self-help group you might have heard, Kerala का है Kudumbashree. Okay, it's a chain of self-help group. Kerala का है. They are largely involved in education, girl education में they are involved in. Okay, as well as microcredit, women empowerment. This is one of the oldest and largest, Kudumbashree. You can say that was majorly SHG in India. What are the challenges faced by these self-help groups? Now you have a fair idea about self-help groups. बताइए. BISHI means chit fund or self-help group. Sorry Shubham, I am not sure what is this BISHI. So in which region? Not aware about this. So see, chit fund and self-help group both are totally different. Chit funds are totally, many of them are informal and they are totally with the intention of money saving scheme. Okay, it's just a money saving scheme. Self-help group is much more broader. Okay, we have seen this self-help group as a channel of women empowerment, okay, employment generation. Yes, lack of technology, very good. They don't use much of technology. Many of these SHGs, they are involved in the local industries, local economic activities, but they are not much, they don't make use of technological support. Lack of awareness, yes, money is not repaid timely, very good. Inadequate training, good. Then financial literacy, managerial skill, misuse of fund, very good. प्रॉब्लम्स ऑफ मार्केटिंग, चलो डिस्कस करते हैं, एक एक लिखते जाओ, प्लीज कीप राइटिंग. फर्स्ट वन, देयर एरिया ऑफ एक्टिविटी. Okay, their area of activity. Most of the self-help groups are involved in agricultural activity only. Okay, so issues के साथ साथ में suggestions भी आप लिख सकते हो. Okay, both are related. First issue is their area of activity. Most of the self-help groups are involved in agricultural activity only. We need to diversify them. Why? See, if they are involved in agricultural activity only, this is not giving an alternative employment opportunity. Anyway, the men are involved. Of course, abhi women are involved more in agriculture than men, right? That is a main mode of employment in rural areas. But in addition to that, there is a necessity that we need to diversify it. In case of failure of agriculture, in case of crop failure, they should have some alternative source, right? That is the first issue, and the suggestion is diversification. Second issue is they have less access to market. Many of the women self-help groups who are involved in handicrafts making, है ना, बास्केट मेकिंग, ऐसे बहुत सारा एक्टिविटीज चलता है वुमेन सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स का. दे डोंट हैव मच एक्सेस टू मार्केट. द गवर्नमेंट नीड टू इंटरफेयर हियर टू प्रोवाइड देम बेटर एक्सेस टू मार्केट in terms of awareness or in terms of training. Fine. Third, technology. टेक्नोलॉजी के बारे में मैंने ऑलरेडी बोल दिया है. So they are not much aware about the technology at all. If the government can interfere here and train them again and bring some technological support to them, they are going to do a very good job here. Then lack of skill development. Even though there are many programs, which are targeting the self-help groups in the area of women empowerment, skill development, training and all, but it is still not adequate. We need to train them. We need to train them more specifically. Self-help groups is considered as an innovation in the area of women empowerment, microcredit, है ना, financial mobilization, and it has not been completely used to a great extent. Then political interference, ये important है. Political interference. In most of the rural areas, जो भी women group होगा, उनका जो leader रहता है, they were taken by these local political parties or local political leaders. They will take them into confidence and use these channels as the political organization, as the vote banking या election rallies में. So बहुत सारा political interference यहाँ पर चलता है. They should not be used. They should be totally used as a channels of economic and social empowerment, not as a political mobilization. Then funding issue. फंडिंग का क्या इशू है? दोनों इशू है. फंडिंग में एक तो there is a restriction, है ना? So even though they are eligible for funding, there are few rules at the local bank which they have to fulfill. थोड़ा सा regulations है, थोड़ा सा strictness है. So there comes the discretion of this local bank whether to loan should be given or not. In many of the places they are not given role, but there is a reason behind that also. जो भी SHGs बनता है, many of the times they take loan and they disappear. They don't repay the loans. Many of the times they form self-help groups just to avail the loans. उसके बाद में तो गायब हो जाते हैं. Fine, they will run it for 6 months, they will show the active account and they will take the loan, then they disappear. Fine, both are there in terms of provision of funding as well as the repay. There is not much of accountability. So यहाँ पर चाहिए a system of monitoring. Okay, a proper system of monitoring is required here. One major challenge is socio-cultural challenges. Socio-cultural challenges in the context of rural setup. There are specific socio-cultural challenges in the context of self-help groups. What are the socio-cultural challenges? First example, poverty. Okay, poverty. Poverty is so rampant in many of the areas, it prevents these women from engaging in these kind of extra activities. They will not get time at all. उनका time ही नहीं मिलता है. ना, poverty prevents them from involving in these kind of activities. Second, lack of awareness. Okay, they are not much aware at all the benefits which they are going to get from getting involved here. Poverty हो गया, lack of awareness हो गया. तीसरा है कि patriarchy. Okay, patriarchy. In many of the regions, particularly wherever the जो rural areas में जो patriarchy ज़्यादा बहुत strong है, women are not allowed to go out of the home and financial mobilization तो छोड़ ही दो. Patriarchy is so prevalent even in urban areas also. So they will say men are earning, what is the need of women to work? ये सारा इतना सारा है. In rural areas you can imagine. घर का काम में इन्वॉल्व कर सकते हैं, एग्रीकल्चर में इन्वॉल्व कर सकते हैं, बट इफ दे आर हैविंग सम काइंड ऑफ सोशल मीट और सम काइंड ऑफ ग्रुपिंग, इट प्रिवेंट्स देम. पेट्रियार्कीज इन अनदर जॉइंट फैमिली, बिग फैमिली है तो फैमिली रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ज्यादा है, दे विल नॉट गेट टाइम टू इन्वॉल्व हियर, दे डोंट गेट मच सपोर्ट फ्रॉम द फैमिली मेंबर्स. कास्ट डिवाइड very good. The caste hierarchies are so rigid, it prevents the people from forming a group and intermixing of different castes. That limits. And most important issue पता है socio-cultural, marriage. Usually in rural areas they don't get married within the same village. In northern circle, northern regions में ना ये concept रहता है. Within the same village they follow a common gotra. Usually they get married to another village, and after the marriage, of course, patriarchy के वजह से it's the women who leave the village and move to the next village. So this is one major issue why these self-help groups discontinue. A lot of people, they move out of their own village after the marriage. There comes the hindrance. Many of the SHGs break because of that. And migration, because of urban rural migration, many of them leave. Fine. And patriarchy का best example है between UP, Bihar, Haryana and Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala. If you compare these two states, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, they are one of the largest in terms of self-help groups, women self-help groups, who are more active even politically, socially, etc. Okay, they are very active. They have many movements. Okay, anti-Iraq movement ले लो, आंध्र प्रदेश का ही था. Okay, and many of the even environmental movements Kerala में भी है. They are led by women. So where there is lesser patriarchy compared to the northern Ganga plains. Okay, UP, Haryana, Bihar. So where the number of self-help groups are also less. That is the best example for patriarchy. एंड पॉलिटिकल एंगल भी यहां पर लेके आ सकते हो, बिकॉज see in most of the places, in most of the regions, even though the women are active part of this some kind of this SHGs, the men of the family may take the benefit. Many of the times they are part of the self-help groups and they take the money, but that money will be taken again by these men only. उनका पर्सनल यूज के लिए ले लेते हैं. फाइन. सो दैट इज ऑल्सो सोशियो कल्चरल इश्यू. एंड फाइनली आते हैं हमारा FCRA, फॉरेन कंट्रीब्यूशन रेगुलेशन एक्ट. व्हाट इज फॉरेन कंट्रीब्यूशन रेगुलेशन एक्ट? See, originally the act was brought in 2010. 2010 में the government brought an act, the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, with the intention of regulating foreign funding to India. ठीक है, उसमें कुछ बहुत स्पेसिफिक रूल्स था, जैसे कि these are the organization can take funding, these are the organization cannot take funding. In that हमारा जो पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज था, दे आर द मेजर वंस, दे वर नॉट सपोज टू टेक पॉलिटिकल फंडिंग, फॉरेन फंडिंग, सॉरी. एंड इवन द मीडिया, इंक्लूडिंग इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया, दे वर ऑल प्रोहिबिटेड फ्रॉम टेकिंग द फॉरेन फंडिंग. एंड सेकेंड, जो भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हुएवर दे वांटेड टू, ये सारा प्रोविजंस आपका मटेरियल में है, सो डोंट वरी अबाउट डिक्टेशन, ओके, बस सुन लेना. सो जो भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हु वांटेड टू टेक फंडिंग, दे शुड रजिस्टर देमसेल्व्स विद द authority, that is Foreign Contribution Regulation Authority. It provided for the establishment of authority, and this authority registered these organizations. जिसको भी foreign funding लेना है, they should be registered with the Foreign Contribution Regulation Authority. And वो registration should be renewed at regular intervals of 5 years. ठीक है. And जो भी बैंक जो पैसा ले रहा है, because you have to take the funding in bank account only, right? So whichever the bank is receiving this money, suppose your NGO has a bank account in ICICI Bank, and through that you are receiving the money, and it becomes obligation for this bank to notice the government, okay, ऐसे इतना पैसा आया है. At regular intervals they have to give a intimation to the government. And even if you are getting money, you should specifically say for what purpose you are getting the money, and you should utilize the money for only that purpose. And originally it was said that जो administrative expense है, okay, administrative expense है, that should be used for up to only 50%. You cannot say पूरा पैसा मैंने administration में लगा दिया, कोई काम नहीं किया, ऐसे नहीं बोल सकता है. ठीक है. And you should find an annual report. Only those who are complying with the annual reports, they will get the registration from FCRA, अदरवाइज रिन्यूअल नहीं होगा. ये सारा पहले 2010 वाला था, पुराना प्रोविजंस. अगर जो भी ये रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशन फॉलो नहीं किया, उनका रजिस्ट्रेशन कैंसिल कर देंगे. एंड इफ योर रजिस्ट्रेशन विद FCRA इज कैंसिल्ड, यू कैन नॉट टेक मनी फ्रॉम द फॉरेन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस. ठीक है, यू आर बार्ड फ्रॉम टेकिंग मनी. सो मेनी ऑफ द टाइम्स whichever the organization in news, including the recent one जो हमारा मिशनरीज ऑफ चैरिटी भी न्यूज में आया था, so they are saying that government ने stop कर दिया. Actually they cannot stop, they don't have the powers to stop. If they are not following these with these kind of rules, report नहीं फाइल कर रहे, registration renew नहीं कर रहे, so ऐसे कुछ है तो then the government can hold temporarily, they can bar them from taking the funding. So that is the recent issue. जो missionaries of charities के context में जो बोल रहे थे, they were saying, some of them were saying that the government has stopped, and they themselves clarified that stop नहीं हुआ है, and the government was saying that उनका report फाइल नहीं हुआ annual report, इसलिए हमने रोका है, ऐसा कुछ आया था. Of course इसके ऊपर तो क्वेश्चन नहीं आने वाले. So question would be majorly about the FCRA provisions, which I have told now, है ना. So क्या क्या था इसमें? Political parties were barred, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया इज बार्ड, दे शुड गेट द रजिस्ट्रेशन फ्रॉम FCRA. हर 5 साल में रिन्यूअल होना चाहिए, एंड द बैंक शुड इन्फॉर्म, एंड दे शुड स्पेंड द मनी ओनली फॉर दैट पर्पस फॉर विच दे हैव रिसीव्ड, एंड एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव एक्सपेंस कैन नॉट गो बियॉन्ड 50%. एंड एनुअल रिपोर्ट फाइनल होना चाहिए. एंड अगर कोई भी फॉलो नहीं कर रहा है तो दे कैन बी, देयर रजिस्ट्रेशन कैन बी कैंसल्ड. दीज वर द ओरिजिनल वन. एंड रिसेंटली इन 2020 there was amendment, FCRA Amendment Act. Okay, सेम ओरिजिनल को अमेंड किया है विथ एडिशन ऑफ सर्टेन प्रोविजंस. So what are these amendments? And these amendments were one of the most criticized. These amendments were one of the most criticized. In fact, before this 2020 amendment, there was an amendment in 2015 itself. इसके ऊपर क्वेश्चन आया था यूपीएससी में 2015 अमेंडमेंट के ऊपर. 2015 में क्या हुआ था? द गवर्नमेंट ब्रॉट अमेंडमेंट एंड अमॉन्ग द मेनी ऑफ द थिंग्स इट अलाउड द पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज टू गेट द फंडिंग. तब तक पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज वर नॉट अलाउड, बट मेनी ऑफ द पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज वर टेकिंग द मनी एंड उसको अलो कर दिया थ्रू एन अमेंडमेंट इन 2015. एंड देयर वाज ए कॉमन यूनिटी अमॉन्ग ऑल द पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज टू अलो द पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज फॉर फॉरेन फंडिंग. एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम दे आर अलाउड. There is no restriction on political parties from receiving foreign funding. वो 2015 में ही हो गया था. 2020 में amendments क्या क्या हुआ है? Among the various prohibited organizations, it has also added public servants. Public servants are not supposed to take money. They are prohibited from receiving any kind of foreign funding. Okay, public servants cannot take any kind of foreign contribution. Okay, this is the first one. Second one, you cannot transfer the money which you have received through foreign contribution. If an organization is receiving money through foreign contribution, you have to use it for that purpose only for which you have received, and you cannot transfer to other organization. Only you have to use it. And third, you have to get an Aadhaar. Okay, particularly जो office members है, उनका Aadhaar, that is must. And even Udyog Aadhaar बोल के even for organization also they are giving Aadhaar now. So overall Aadhaar is made compulsory if you are getting the foreign funding, and during the time of registration of FCRA you have to give your Aadhaar. So that makes it easier. It makes it easier to track the funding. Okay, Aadhaar has been made compulsory. And now the government has brought another rule saying that you have to take funding only in SBI banks, not in any other banks, only in SBI banks, that too those banks, those branches of SBI which are in Delhi. Delhi में जो SBI branches है, only in those SBI branches you have to take the funding. And no other funding should come to this account. This account should be specifically kept for foreign contribution only. Foreign funding के लिए ही रखना है, and that should be in Delhi's SBI branch only. And whoever has violated, their license can be cancelled at any point of time. जो भी उनका registration था, पहले था renewal नहीं हो रहा था, 5 साल में एक बार रिन्यूअल हो रहा था. नाउ इफ दे आर फाउंड टू बी वायलेटिंग एनी ऑफ दिस, देयर लाइसेंस मतलब देयर अप्रूवल टू गेट द फॉरेन फंडिंग कैन बी कैंसल्ड एट एनी पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम. सो दैट मीन्स इवन बिफोर द रिन्यूअल योर अप्रूवल कैन बी कैंसल्ड. एंड पहले 50% एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव एक्सपेंसेस था, उसको बना दिया ओनली 20%. मतलब whatever the money you are taking, you cannot claim more than 20% as administrative expense. Rest everything you have to spend it for a particular activity. So now you can see why this amendment was criticized to a great extent. So they are using Aadhaar, they are limiting to Delhi's SBI branch only, and they are saying that administrative expenses cannot go beyond 20%, and even जो before renewal के पहले ही you are conducting an inquiry and you are shutting them off. All of these are widely criticized. Fine. So that is why this FCRA Amendment Act of 2020 was in news. Is that clear? So that completes our last unit. So last unit was it's majorly little bit of general discussion oriented, and you need to understand the overall idea of NGO self help groups. So इसके ऊपर questions भी थोड़ा बहुत generic आता है, which you have to substantiate by giving practical examples or diversifying the dimensions of various things. So that is always suggested. And second thing is जो भी current related news है in this, try to keep up with that. जो भी current अभी तक हुआ है मैंने cover कर दिया, FCRA and recent cancellation of registration यही था. So बाकी सारा will be dealt as part of your current affairs in governance. Okay, current affairs जो monthly magazine current affairs होगा, so उसमें cover हो जाएगा. Okay, this is the third and fourth unit, and few of the things are left which is not covered in the class, that is the various different national policies. You have to read about the different national policy on health, national policy on education, and national policy on telecommunication, ऐसे जो important national policies है. You have to read it, and that will be given as a part of your material. Please just go through that. ठीक है? And various programs and initiatives taken by the government under this welfare of weaker section, that would be dealt as part of your social justice. Okay, governance is majorly about talking about the method of policy formulation and the various issues in that. So that is about the governance. बाकी सारा जो specific programs है, that will be dealt as part of your social justice. What type of foreign funding can public servant receive? You cannot receive any type of foreign funding. पहले that was included as part of your civil services rules, conduct rules में था, अभी उसको FCRA के अंदर specifically लेके आ गया है. So you're totally barred from receiving any kind of foreign funding. Okay, public servants. Yes, that completes our discussion on governance, and I hope I have tried to cover in जितना maximum हो सकता है, because governance is little bit, it becomes a little bit boring if you try to make it more theoretical. So giving examples and current context is very important, and try to write as many answers as possible. So that is going to be beneficial in understanding the different perspectives of governance. So if you have any other doubts and queries, you can write to me at this mail ID. It's rajesh@visionis.in. Yes, last but not least, I wish you a very happy new year to all of you. So we'll see you in any of the subsequent classes, in any other engagements. Thank you very much. Yes, it's absolutely my pleasure teaching all of you. It has been good experience even from learning you guys. Thank you very much.